So we're going to have the rest of the time for a Q&A session. So Holland and I, we're going to be here to answer any of your questions. So to participate in the Q&A, you just click on the Q&A button, type in your question, or ask an adult to type it in for you. And if someone else asks a question you like, you can upvote that question. So it gets moved to the top of our list. And then your question can be about traditional food in Spain or India, or any questions you have about Spain or India in general. And we will try to answer as many questions as we can in the time remaining. And we'll just give you some time to type up some questions, and we'll just be waiting here for y'all.
Nikki, I think there's some questions for you.
All right.
Okay.
I'll read them out for you guys. One said, what are the meal times for meals in India? If there's like a general range of what time they usually eat each meal, or how it might vary some.
I think it might vary by region and like your specific lifestyle in general, but usually meal times are pretty similar to what we have in America. They'll have breakfast around like 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. If it's more of a brunch kind of meal, a lot of Indian people will actually skip like a breakfast and have a brunch instead, and then eat like a snack around 4 and then have dinner at like 9. So usually meal times might be a little later during the day. It's pretty common to eat lunch as a heavier meal, similar to Spain, or in some cases, if you have a lighter lunch, you'll eat a heavier dinner. So you try to have one heavy meal a day, and then the rest of your meals are pretty light. How does Indian food and spice vary region to region? I think it very much depends on the region and what's available. Some places are closer to the coast, so they'll have more seafood and meat, so they might incorporate more spices versus other areas. So it really does vary region to region. Typically, from what I've heard, is South Indian food is usually spicier than North Indian food. So I guess it just depends on like your taste buds. And then dairy, milk, cheese, or yogurt. Is that for both Spain and India?
Yeah, you guys can both answer that one.
I think it's usually like milk, just typical milk. I think they get whole milk. Something cool in India is they don't have cartons of milk like we do. They use bagged milk. So the milk, you get milk from like the milkman every day in like a little plastic bag. So that's kind of different from America.
In Spain, I would say that milk is pretty uncommon actually. Obviously they use it to cook and things, but they definitely don't drink it in the same way that we would in the United States. I would say the biggest dairy component is definitely cheese. They have lots of queso, lots of different kinds of queso, and they're incorporated into a lot of the meals. So.
Someone said, do the foods share the same name in English, Spanish, and Indian languages? Do they use any of the US words, or do they have their own words for some of the foods?
The one word I know is like tomato is not an Indian word. Like there's no like word in like any Indian language, I think, for tomato, like because that's like a word from colonization. So like I don't know like if that's any different in Spain.
Yeah, Spain, I can't think off the top of my head of anything that is a direct only English word, because Spanish and English are there's a ton of cognates and a lot of things that sound the same. So if there's tomato in a dish, it's tomate, or potatoes, it's patatas. And so a lot of the time you can kind of figure out what the food would be anyway, just from what it sounds like.
Good. Another question is, what is your biggest takeaways? So from some of your travels, maybe what are your biggest takeaways, things that you learned about the culture?
You can go first, Nikki, yeah.
Okay, from traveling, it's been a while since I've gone to India. I think I was a really young kid when I've gone, but it is definitely like a different culture for me. People do, English is one of the most common languages spoken there, but I do remember like when I used to go there, I don't speak Hindi, so like people would try to converse with me in Hindi, and I kind of have like a little bit of a language barrier, but usually you can get by with speaking English there since most people do speak English. And then I just think food is really cool there. Like I think having street food is really awesome. Like we don't have that here. Like I can't just go up outside and like get some cool hot food. So like I really love that about India.
Yeah, for me, with food in Spain especially, I think the idea of tapas is something that I wanted to incorporate more in my life since coming back. I think having multiple small things of different little plates that you can try is a really interesting way to eat. And I think it helps also with not stuffing yourself too much. Like sometimes I think if I have a big plate in front of me and my eyes don't match how much my stomach can hold, and I'm just shoveling it in the United States. And I think in the same way that Nikki said, in India, Spain is very social with their meal times as well. And it's definitely a time where people are sitting down and enjoying things together. And I also agree that in Spain, handheld food, takeaway food is really common. There's lots of sandwich places all over the city, and people will grab those and go sit in a square and eat and talk and be with each other. And it's really cool.
Good. So yeah, all these questions are good so far. We've got one more I'm going to read out in a second, but I also want to remind you guys, you can also ask questions about any topic, either the foods, which is great, the presentation topic, or just anything you want to know about Spain or India. So the next question is, what is the best Spanish Indian food in your opinion? If you guys maybe have a favorite dish.
Do you want to start, Holland?
Sure. I can give you a least favorite dish and a favorite dish, because the least favorite one popped in my head, which was I lived in like a residence hall while I was there. It was mixed with study abroad students and then Spanish students who were at the local university, and we had like a team of cooks that cooked for us in the main lobby area. And one thing that I could just never make myself eat, or I tried and couldn't continue to eat, was fried anchovies with the faces still on them. It was hard for me, and that is a very common food in Spain. We had it almost twice a week for dinner probably. But my favorite, I'm definitely a grain girl. I love potatoes and patatas bravas, and the amount of seafood that was available everywhere were two highlights for me for sure. Usually when we would go to restaurants, I would usually have some sort of plate of clams or mussels and patatas bravas.
I can do a worst and best. I think one of the worst foods is there's like an Indian vegetable called bitter gourd, and it's just like a really bitter vegetable. Like I can't handle it at all. Like they'll try to make like chip versions or like curry versions. Just like I just can't handle it. Some people love it, just not me. I think if you have a sweet tooth, Indian sweets are really good. They're really sweet, so they're probably not good for you by any means, but they're very sweet. And then obviously street food's like really good in India. You just have to be careful with like making sure you're getting it from like a sanitary place, and like having your own like bottled water with you so you're not hurting your own stomach.
There's a question, how does economic class or economic status affect meals, if you noticed that much or while you were there?
Yeah, I can talk about that in Spain. So one thing that's a little bit hard for me to address with that is that I was living in Barcelona, and Barcelona and Madrid are like the two biggest cities in Spain, and there was not a lot of economic class diversity, I would say there. There is some, obviously, but one thing that I thought was particularly interesting is I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that I interned at a school while I was there, and I took the subway to a school actually outside of Spain, or outside of Barcelona, I mean, in a city called Dolores, which is close, but on the outskirts of Barcelona, and they provided full school meals for students. So, in the United States, a lot of times you have to have money or credit to pay for school lunches that are provided by the school. But in Spain, at least in the area that I was in, they were providing lunches for everyone. And I thought that the quality of them seemed better to me than what I'd experienced in United States public schools. I think that the food was definitely healthier, and you had more options for sure. So I think that's one way that they maybe helped out with different economic situations.
Yeah, similar to Spain. I definitely thought I've never gone to school in India, but from what I understand, meals are provided by the school, so kids will get like some rice, some protein, vegetables. It's very healthy. Economic class, I would definitely say maybe in more rural areas, there's a lot more rice consumption because it's more of like an agricultural society. So I guess if you're on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale, you might be eating more rice. You might have only one curry. You're not having like a whole buffet. You're just having like a very limited selection of meals or food to have during each meal. And I guess if you're higher up the socioeconomic scale, you have access to things like McDonald's. You can eat out. You can eat in. Like so, it very much varies based on kind of similar to America. How much access you have to food is definitely different.
Good. Any more questions? Again, you guys can type them into the Q&A or into the chat. And I also shared the link to our YouTube channel in the chat for anyone that's interested. We do also have former virtual festival presentations on there and shorter videos, other videos that of Niki's presentations and Holland's presentations of other topics are on there as well. So you guys can explore that afterwards and share it with other teachers and students that you know. We've just got a general question of how are you guys doing today?
You can go.
Great, thank you for asking.
Yeah, I'm doing good. This is a fun way to break up my day from just regular work. I'm enjoying
Yeah.
to you all and interacting with you for sure.
And yeah, we always enjoy the virtual festival. It's a fun time of the semester. It's a fun day, and lucky for us, it was already virtual every semester, so we're able to do it even though students are at home. Any other questions you can ask Niki and Holland about their experiences when they were abroad, why the reasons for their different trips. If you're interested in going to any of those places, you can ask them about it. Or any other topics, anything that you want to know. We have someone said, thank you for presenting. This was cool from PJ, who's a first grader. So we're glad that you enjoyed it, PJ.
Yeah.
Shari asks, if you could pick another country to study abroad in, what would it be? That's a good question.
I think I would like to go to London. I went there last summer for like a very short trip. So I think I'd kind of want to spend like a whole semester there. I think it'd be really cool.
That's hard for me. I really enjoyed Spain and I liked the ease of being in Europe and being able to travel to other European countries in my free time was a big bonus. But I do think that something about South Africa seems really interesting to me. My godmother's from South Africa, and it's a place I've always wanted to explore more. And a few of my friends did get to go for their study abroad programs and really enjoyed it there. So that's maybe a place I would like to go.
Someone asked how expensive was studying abroad. So maybe you guys can kind of compare for Holland when you were abroad versus UNC, or your if you have other friends that have studied abroad, how there's different scholarships and different options.
Yeah, so there are a lot of options with study abroad, and it just kind of depends on the locations you're interested in, and then also what kind of program you're doing. So my program was a little bit more expensive than a regular semester at UNC, and the reason for that being was I was enrolled in classes in Barcelona, but I was also interning for credit at the same time, which is I think part of the reason I was working almost 20 hours a week in a school while also taking classes and getting credit for that. So it was slightly more expensive, but generally I think a lot of exchange programs are about equivalent to a semester of college. And obviously plane tickets and that kind of thing can ramp costs up, but there are a lot of scholarship options. UNC really encourages students to study abroad and get global experiences. And so, and a lot of colleges are like that too, not just UNC in general, but yeah, there are a lot of different options.
Yeah, so it can range anywhere from, no additional expenses to the addition of your flight, or, your meals, your housing could differ. But yeah, UNC has lots of options and lots of scholarships. And so a lot of students that I work with have gotten those awards to travel. Those are good questions. Someone else said thank you and have a good day. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for your questions. And someone said, I believe the Spanish National Honor Society has scholarships to travel. So maybe that's for high school students, which should be a great opportunity. Thanks for sharing that. So thanks again for joining us, everyone, and we hope that you have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.